Hi, this is Sami Karim, and I wanted to share with you a case I had of a late toric IOL rotation. First, I'm going to show the lens star data. As you can see, the axial length here is on the longer side at 25.69 millimeters in the right eye. There's 1.6 diopters of astigmatism, the steep axis being at 104 degrees. Immediately post-operatively, the patient had good vision. When he came back 3 weeks later, the IOL had rotated to somewhere around 160 degrees. And plugging this into the Beardall hardened calculator, was given the choice of rotating the IOL clockwise about 60 degrees to give the best possible vision. So a decision was made to take the patient back to the operating room to rotate the IOL. And I used the Mastel toric marking system in the preoperative area, which allows us to put indentation marks on the cornea. So when we get into the operating room, the cornea is already marked in the proper axis. And I like to augment these marks at the start of the case with just a marking pen to make sure that we don't lose those marks. Next, I'm making two paracenteses to give me access on either side for the rotation. And then a dispersive viscoelastic is used to fill the anterior chamber and coat the corneal endothelium. Here, I didn't want to make an additional incision to induce any further astigmatism, so I used a Sinskey hook to open my prior incision. And since this is only 3 weeks out, the incision opened quite nicely. Next, a cohesive viscoelastic was used to fill the capsular bag and really viscodissect the haptics out of the capsular fornix. And again, since this was about 3 weeks post-operatively, the haptics became free quite easily. So once the nasal haptic was felt to be free, I did the same maneuver in the temporal region and was able to get good mobility of the IOL. And you could see there the dispersive viscoelastic egressing out of the eye. And then using two instruments with a Sinskey hook in my dominant hand, was able to rotate the IOL quite easily. The haptics were nice and free. There was no fibrosis at this point. And once the IOL was pretty close to the intended axis, I augmented the 104-degree axis one more time. I typically use an inked suture, which provides a really nice thin mark on the corneal surface and really allows you to get a very good alignment of your toric IOL. And typically I do not use capsular tension ring routinely with my toric cases, but in this case I felt that this rotation may have occurred due to a large capsular bag, especially given the longer axial length in this patient. So I wanted to do anything possible to prevent further rotation and really keep the IOL in proper position. So I decided to use capsular tension ring in this case, and here I'm using the Henderson style scalloped capsular tension ring, which in my experience, when you use it for these cases, it helps provide better stability of the IOL, probably by making more contact with the haptics in the capsular bag. And I'm using a Sinskey hook here in my non-dominant hand to make sure that the leading end of the CTR does not further move the IOL out of position. And that seemed to work pretty well in this case. And then here I'm just dialing the IOL into perfect position. And once I'm satisfied with the position here, then the only step remaining is to remove the viscoelastic. And in all toric IOL cases, it's imperative to really get underneath the IOL and remove all of the viscoelastic from the capsular bag. And in this case, since we put a lot of viscoelastic in, it's very important to do a good IA at the end of the case. So once the viscoelastic is removed posterior to the IOL, the same maneuver is performed to really remove the IOL from the anterior chamber and the sulcus space. And once this is complete, I also like to make sure that the wounds are well sealed and there's no leak from the wound at all, which you should be doing anyway, but I think in these cases it's even more important to prevent any rotation of the IOL. And I also spend a little bit extra time just to make sure that the IOP in the eye is really as close to physiologic as possible, so that there's no shallowing or deepening of the eye in the postoperative period. Here I inject intracameral moxifloxacin and check the incisions a couple of times and get the IOP just right. And once I'm happy with that, I confirm the toric IOL position. Whenever there's some parallax, I like to make sure that the corneal line that I make is parallel to the toric axis markers, which in this case I was happy with the positioning. And I finished the case with subconj Kenalog injection, which is my routine these days for dropless cataract surgery. And this is the patient's picture with the IOL positioned nicely at 130 degrees. Thanks for watching.